Uh, my name is Mohit Bhatnagar. I want to thank all of you for joining us. I'm here joined by Sudhir Haspe, who's the Director of Product Management for all things at Google related to analytics. It includes a wide array of product, which I'm sure makes the life fun for Sudhir. And likewise, I'm responsible at Qubole for product aspect. So Sudhir, I know you've been very actively involved with GCP Next and some very cool new product launches, etc. came. So why don't we kick off the discussion? Tell us about what's happening at GCP Next.
Yeah, thanks, Mohit. I hope you all can hear me. Thank you for joining us today again. It was exciting couple of weeks for us. We launched our Cloud Next on Air. It is a digital conference around 5-6 weeks back. And so every week we have been focusing on one topic area. Last week was data analytics, and this is a great timing just after the week that we announced a few key capabilities. I'm here with you, Mohit. There were actually, I'm super excited. There were a lot of announcements we had across the portfolio. We like support for Spark 3.0. We just announced streaming predictions. So I know a lot of organizations are using streaming. So streaming predictions is becoming important. So bringing our unique capability on streaming and cloud AI together was a big deal for us. But for this conversation, I wanted to focus on three things that are really, really amazing and exciting for me. Number one is we do believe in multi-cloud. So BigQuery Omni, it is basically
Right.
our ability to go ahead and run analytics with BigQuery on different clouds. So we announced a private alpha for AWS, and then Azure will be coming soon. So super excited about the whole multi-cloud environment and what we can do with BigQuery as a managed service for our customers to analyze data in other clouds. The second one is when I joined Google Cloud around 3 years back, we had this initial bet we made on BigQuery ML, so democratizing machine learning
Right.
with BigQuery ML. We launched like set of new models that are powered by Cloud AI and also TensorOff interoperability, so export to TensorOff, TensorFlow, and then import and export from that. Super excited about that, making it easy for organizations to do machine learning. And the third big one we announced is, I think insights are still within smaller groups within organizations. With data Q&A, it's a natural language experience on top of BigQuery, which allows you to just ask questions, get answers on top of BigQuery. So I think those were 2 or 3 big announcements. I think I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, very exciting. This has been 2020 has been a strange year, and I hope all our audience, you and your family are safe. But it's also in many ways exciting years. You talked about number of products. From our side, we have been very, very active, and in fact, I can see some of the themes that you and I will talk about are driving our product strategy. As an example, just earlier this week, we launched Qubole Pipelines, which is taking the Spark streaming capability and really making it easier for organization to build the streaming pipelines with very simplified use case. Likewise, you know that multi-cloud has been a very core theme of Qubole, and I'm sure you and I will get a chance to talk about it. So it is, I think, very powerful for us to see when organizations like GCP and Qubole come together and we start addressing some code requirements of our custom. So with that, let's spend some time sharing with our audience what you and I are seeing in terms of the key trends. So let's start with your thoughts on what are the key trends. And I know when you and I talk about, you mentioned how data is driving the digital transformation.
Yeah.
Expand on that, and then let's weave into on how, as people who care about analytics a lot, how do we leverage that data to solve our customers' problems?
No, I think you're right, Mohit. We have talked about it a few times between both of us. Like every organization is going through digital transformation, and especially with things happening this year, all organizations have realized they have to move faster towards digitization, right?
Right.
As that is happening, one of the big things that is happening is organizations are like breaking down the data silos. Like
Right.
on-prem, it was easy to have a data warehouse and a data lake and have them siloed into different environments, and you have a bunch of data marts and all of that. but as organizations are moving and digitizing and moving to cloud, they're realizing that these data silos are not a great way of running the
Right.
business. They want to get holistic view of the data and insights from all of it. And so I'm seeing this trend where they're breaking down these silos. They want interoperability between data lakes and data warehouses and data marts and all of that. So that's one key theme
Right.
I am seeing, which is really powerful. Um, the second one I would say is like just every organization is trying to figure out how to go ahead and expand the use of machine learning and AI within their organizations. Gone are the days we used to talk about, is ML, AI real, what happens? Now the
Right.
more question is, how do I make it more accessible within organizations? How do we make it easy for all, like, analysts and data scientists to do this machine learning AI and deploy it in production? So I think that's the second one. Um, I think we talked about streaming, Mohit. I think we have mentioned both of us quite a few times. So are you want to cover streaming, what you're seeing in that
Yeah.
sector?
I think the notion that data silos has been broken, I think there's a meta theme to it. And I think COVID has accelerated that trend. Organizations not only need to build pipelines that are flexible, they need to build them very, very rapidly. And they need to incorporate the real-time streaming aspects to it. When I talk to our customers, they have actually said that my business model is completely changed upside down. I have to do data analytics and AI ML in ways that I did not do before. And there, I think the power of data lakes where a large amount of structured and unstructured data and semi-structured data can come together. And then you can do all kinds of different processing so as to build pipeline becomes very powerful. Look, for us, streaming is absolutely an essential way of life. Now, one of the things I always talk to our customers is that anybody who tells you this is the one way of doing things is absolutely wrong, right? So what you need is an ability to have a data stores where you can actually build pipelines in a flexible manner, where you can do batch and streaming pipelines and join them together
Yeah.
if needed in order to get insights. You want flexibility, and you and I will talk about on how the paradigms of data lake and data warehouse, it's not a matter of exclusivity. In fact, we would argue that they are very synergistic. So it's in that same spirit I see synergies between batch and streaming kind of workload. The key thing, Howard, Sudhir, I would say is that it's not about doing streaming. It's about actually making it easier to do it,
Yeah.
right? Because organizations want it, but they don't necessarily quite often have the know-how to do it. And that's why the Cubole pipelines that we launched, the focus was exclusively to talk about the ease of use. So as to make, because real time is actually real now.
Yeah,
So,
that's
so I think
actually, I've heard that thing. Real time is real, and real time is real money. That
real
thing.
time is real money. Yes, yes.
So I
Um,
actually just a couple of thoughts on that one, right? I think one thing is having real time access, and you see all businesses are becoming more real time across industries. One of the other things is also one of the other things I'm noticing is this democratization of insights at every level, right?
yes,
I think access to information and insights having limited to like executives within organizations through dashboards and reports, gone are those days. You
gone are
have
those
to
days completely.
empower like everyone. I think one great example I can bring together to show you is actually one of our big customers in Australia, Woolworths. They saw with COVID, their customers were coming to store and they were running out of things, and they needed to give them real-time information on what product is available in what store, and that's a real-time aspect of inventory
Mm,
as well as visibility. And they have done this amazing demo I saw recently. You can go to Google Maps, search any Woolworth store, and then in real time go chat with the bot and say, hey, do you have milk or do you have gravy in a particular store? And they can show you real time information. So just like our expectation, like as consumers, has grown from businesses, and this is where it brings down, hey, I want insights too, as a consumer, as a user, in real time. I want to know what is happening. So, and you have to break the silos and say, hey, bring it all together and give me holistic view of information. So I think those are the big ones I'm seeing, Mohit.
right. So Sudhir, and by the way, it's very compelling that you gave Woolworth example, because likewise, we have a customer, Mapbox. Mapbox is providing data mapped technology to lots and lots of their customers. And it is mind-boggling that I can go to actually my smartphone and see real-time changes taking place in the mapping technology, which are integrated with the analytics that is taking place with overnight batch processing. So that's very exciting. So Sudhir, one of the things that you and we have quite passionate about, and I think we have chatted about this, is that how you are responsible for a wide array of Google technologies that goes from data engineering, data warehouse, data lake, data proc is there, and Qubole is focused on data lake. And what we found was that there is a lot of synergies that are there in paradigms of data warehouse and data lake. So let's take a few minutes, dispel these myths, because I find some of the vendors talk about as if data warehouse is the answer or data lake is the answer. Let's talk about how you and we have worked together with our teams so as to bring solutions that actually show the synergies between data lake and data warehouse. So let's start with your thoughts. And what do you think?
Yeah, I think the best line on this one is from, so I was doing the keynote in London last year, and one of the customers that was on stage was HSBC and Shane Lamont, and you should listen to his thoughts on it. And I actually like the way he framed it. His thing was, whether I put data in a lake or whether I put data in data warehouse, and when do I put what data in which area, I think it doesn't matter. Over a period of time, those needs have to change, those things have to change. Right. I just want flexibility of late binding these decisions. Today I have put some stuff in lake, I want to move it to data warehouse, I want to move from data warehouse to data lake, or I want to go ahead and put everything in a single large environment and then do analysis and stuff like that. So I think the philosophical thing from a Google perspective is we want complete interoperability, whether you store data in an object store or in your structured store, columnar data store, whatever, right? Whether you use BigQuery to store all the data, whether you store data in GCS buckets, it doesn't matter. You should be able to use all the same engines. We have customers that want to use Spark on top of BigQuery data. We have customers that want to run BigQuery queries on top of GCS data. So we do see this complete interoperability. And this is where Omni is critical, because Omni is basically allowing you to query data on S3 with all the standard Parquet ORC files, right? So this interoperability between data lakes and data warehouses, and from a storage perspective, wherever it goes, is actually the trend, and it's actually the most realistic way of thinking about it. You don't want to put all your data in one format versus other and make those decisions in the silo. If you have structured data, it makes more sense to put it into one kind of a store. If you have unstructured data, it's different. If you're not going to use data for large amount of time for something, it may be different. So I think organizations should have flexibility to decide where they store, but seamlessly apply same kind of engines, same kind of processing, and same kind of governance across them. I think that is our point of view. And from Google perspective, we've been focused a lot on making that interoperability across these platforms work.
Right. Actually, that's point of view you and we shared. In fact, I remember when even way back in October of 2018, when we were building Qubole partnership for Google, right from the get-go at Qubole, we ensured that Qubole operated both with the GCS as well as BigQuery.
Yeah.
And we have tons of our customers who are using Qubole for large-scale data engineering and feeding into BigQuery, and likewise Qubole customers who are taking the data which sits in BigQuery and doing AI ML on it. So to me, I think this point of view is very pragmatic. This is not a philosophical. And in fact, one thing I would suggest to our audience that please do take a look at both GCP and Qubole and how we have done these kinds of integration and how it gives you the flexibility that we earlier talked about organization need. The other thing which I think is very important in that theme of flexibility is that there is a need for open standards and platforms to avoid vendor lock-in. And I know Qubole as a company utilizes all open standards. We use platform. We build lots of IP on top of it, obviously. But we want you to utilize our technologies knowing that there is a value add as opposed to we did lock-in. So Sudhir, in that sense, I think we are very much aligned because Dataproc, which is your data lake solution, Qubole, etc. We are utilizing a whole bunch of open source engines so as to ensure the right open source engine is available for the technology. But another example of that, which you and I talked about, is how Qubole has taken ACID capability, which is very important for GDPR and CCPA, and ensured that it actually goes across Qubole's core engines of Spark, Presto, Hive, and down the road, if you decide to do Flink and TensorFlow, etc. Your thoughts on it, because you are also working with the same philosophical approach, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Being an open cloud is critical to our strategy. We believe that not just because it's philosophical to us, but also that's what customers want. So,
Yeah.
and we normally want to build what our customers want. So in that realm, everything from, if you look at our 15-year history in Google, we have open sourced a lot of different technologies. There are a lot of papers from GFS to Kubernetes, and with Anthos, there's a lot of things we have done in the open source realm. So we are completely aligned on that one theme, which is being open is critical to us. Open to not just APIs and formats, but open to being multi-cloud. And we are taking our crown jewel with BigQuery and enabling that on AWS, and we will go to Azure very soon. So being open that way is important. We support Parquet ORC files. As you mentioned with Dataproc, we support almost all Apache projects. So you can go from the Presto, Hive, Spark with Spark 3.0, as well as to Druid and everything. So you can deploy any of that, and all of those engines can interoperate and work with us. So being open is super critical to us. Our customers want it, and we want to make sure they have choices. We do invest in some cloud native services that provide high differentiated capabilities, but we want to make sure we are open on those. We basically make sure if you're in BigQuery, you can leverage BigQuery with open formats, and you can also export data into various different open formats so that you can actually access it from different places, and you can run open source engines on top of it. So being open is critical to our strategy, and we'll continue investing in that.
I think customers are asking, and the notion of, I always think about the innovations that we will do as partners, as well as the innovation that our customers will do, requires them to have these flexibilities. Anybody who says this is the engine and this is how the only engine you should use, or you should dump all your data into this proprietary formats, I think is going to compromise customers' ability to build those flexible pipelines and deal with the new use cases. One of the things that, however, is very important is that we have to innovate on top of open source. So as an example, when we look at engines like Spark or Presto, etc., I think there's tremendous upside innovation can be done so as to optimize performance. Qubole has done some very sophisticated runtime algorithms for management of the spot, which can lead to significantly lower cost with the preemptible VMs integration that we have done. So I want to make sure that people are realizing that open standards and open framework, it still leaves plenty of room for us to do IPAD and innovation. One of the things that I would love to talk to you about is customers have diverse set of needs. We talked about flexibility, we talked about real time, we talked about openness, but it was always the case, and COVID has made it even more important, that the flexibility and the total cost of ownership and financial governance come together. Organizations don't have that excess amount of money to just throw in. So let's talk about what are some of the things that we can do. We can help our customers from the point of view of TCO and financial governance. You want to kick off in your portfolio?
Yeah, I can share a couple of thoughts, right? I think the main thing with COVID that organizations realized, actually this is a quote, I won't mention the name of the customer, it was a private conversation, but the thing was, they basically were mentioning, hey, if the situation of COVID, where suddenly you have such an increased demand in their space, if that happened when they were on-prem, it would have taken 6 months to just get the hardware deployed and increased. With being on the cloud, and especially with Google Cloud, they were able to go ahead and within an hour or so get whatever capacity they wanted. They were able to scale up. They were able to go ahead and run these pipelines, as well as the analytical capabilities that they had. and it was really quickly getting to that capacity was really important. But the second thing was, because they are only pay as you go, they're only paying for that excess
Right.
capacity when they're using it. They don't need it in steady state. You can go ahead and leverage some of our, like, monthly subscription models where you pay based on what you're consuming at some capacity level. But pay as you go model helps you to only use it on a Monday morning and Friday evening, and just
Right.
pay for that. So I think that combination of agility, flexibility to increase capacity and decrease capacity. More important is, like, let me be frank, there are organizations that have gone through tough times and they wanted to reduce capacity that they're using. And in cloud, it allows you to do that, increase and decrease. That flexibility is important. And pay as you go model helps you go ahead and manage costs. So you're not paying for a long-term investment that you would normally have to go make and all. So I think those are a couple of things from my side. Mohit, what do you think?
Yeah. Look, increasing capacity is easy. Anybody can do that.
Exactly.
So one of the core IP that we have built, and it's funny that how on PowerPoint or Google Slide these things are so easy to say, but in IP, the notion of aggressive downscaling, where be able to take clusters and talk about what is the right size of it, but not only able to go inside of the engine and know the properties of the particular workload. So, for example, one of the investments we have done is to be able to leverage heterogeneous instances. So if I'm doing a particular workload, which is, let's say, memory intensive, I can procure instance types that are memory rich and don't pay for extra compute. Now you combine that with something like Spot and preemptible VMs, and you can actually build clusters, which are ephemeral clusters, very dynamically, utilizing the right combination of instance types as well as spot market, right? But then you have to get this downscale fast, and you have to downscale it fast without compromising the SLA. So that's where I think a lot of innovation goes. The other thing, Sudhir, that we find, and we actually made investment, as you know, is in capabilities around financial governance. It's not just enough to reduce the total cost of ownership, which of course we do that, but it's very important that we give organization an ability to know what is the transparency of their cost structures.
Yeah.
So who's using, what organizations are using it, what is the cost of a query, and what we are finding is that people are not just using that to reduce the cost or budgetary purpose, but they're actually using to do smart decisions. So for example, if I start doing real time, and I start doing real time versus micro batch versus hourly versus weekly, what is my ROI on this one? What is my increased cost, and what is my benefit from a monetization perspective? So we are definitely seeing that. Let's do one more topic, and I'm looking at the clock here. I want to make sure there's plenty time we leave for audience Q&A. Is this topic of multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and you and I, we have dealt with a number of customers who are in their journey from on-premise to cloud. So let's talk about that. With Omni, you definitely, and Anthos, you definitely are making your intentions very clear with multi-cloud solutions. Where do you see that trend evolving?
No, I think we fundamentally believe most organizations are going to be in multiple clouds, right? Like, and a lot of times people say, no, we have decided on one cloud. And then I ask them, okay, you picked whichever cloud, are you not using any other solution from any cloud? And start thinking about what you really use. And they're like, oh yeah, no, at least I have like a bunch of SaaS application that may be running somewhere else and all that. And so the data is getting generated across multiple clouds. And all. So I do believe almost every organization in some shape or form is going to be in multiple cloud environments and from a footprint perspective. So I do think enabling organizations to go do analysis without having to move all the data is going to be critical. And that's where we are betting big and saying, hey, we will take some of our crown jewels and put them on those cloud environments so that we can enable those workloads with a consistent experience that they have. So today, if you're using SQL with BigQuery with the managed experience, you should be able to do that on AWS and Azure. So that's our big thing. We do believe in that. And then we will also expand into other products that are in the portfolio to expand it into multiple cloud environments and stuff like that. So I think that's right. where our focus will be.
Now, for us, it was, very cool. And I thought that was cool work that you guys did. For us, it was actually an easier decision that we were multi-cloud right from the get-go. In fact, I'm proud of the fact that Qubole is perhaps the only data analytics platform that is across all the clouds, all the major clouds, and now we are extending it to hybrid. So for us, our customers are routinely saying that I want flexibility. Not only we have cases of customers with different business units, we have cases where people, for a variety of strategic reasons, actually move from cloud A to cloud B. And for us to be able to give them that single pane of glass, that unified capability move with us was a very strategy from very early on. I think the market is actually demanding it a lot more now. One of the things that
One thing I wanted to add there is, I do talk about BigQuery Omni because it's a recent announcement, but I also want to highlight, we do fundamentally believe in this move towards multi-cloud being more open. And one of the other big investments that we have done, and it's already available for organizations, is move to Kubernetes, right? I think for all of our, we do believe with Dataproc and more of the open source components in your Hadoop Spark world are going to move more and more towards Kubernetes. So we started with Spark on Kubernetes. We will absolutely work on Presto, Flink. All of these components, we do believe over a period of time will move to Kubernetes, which actually makes them way more portable and much easier to move across clouds or on-prem and all of that stuff. So I think that is another area of big investment for us that we continue to see. And this is to support the same thing. Like, we want to be able to run analytics wherever the data is so that we can go ahead and make that possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's something which is like for us is a core part of our architecture. The notion of separation of compute and storage, the separation of control plane and data plane. In fact, we have production instances where our control plane will be sitting in one public cloud and our data plane is sitting in other cloud. And for us, that architectural advantage has allowed us, with the advent of Kubernetes and object stores, that we can actually do this across multiple cloud, across on-prem, and enable hybrid cloud. But even before people go to that journey, I think that it's worth talking about the journey that many customers have to take as they move from on-prem to public cloud. And there, what I would say is that there are some very important best practices that organizations need to consider. One of them is that don't make too many leaps. So for example, if you're moving from on-prem to public cloud, don't try to change your underlying engine and don't try to change your underlying the interfaces that are there. Try to keep some of those things constant while you go from on-prem to cloud journey. The second is that make sure, and I think there's a question we'll answer, which is around data duplication, is to ensure that you might move certain workloads from on-prem to cloud, and that is, of course, a good starting point. But make sure architecturally there's a clarity on how the data will reside, where it will reside, and how are you going to ensure the data consistency across on-prem and public clouds, right? That, I think, covers some of the key points. I'm beginning to see some questions. To the audience, folks, Sudhir and I would love to answer any questions you have. There are a few that are here. Sudhir, can you see, let me just pull a couple of these questions that are here. One is from Gokul, which talks about how do you reduce data duplication and still provide access to all data on many platforms or different analytics workloads? So did you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think this is where our philosophy that you can have data across different platforms without duplicating it, and running analytics with where the data is going to be important over a period of time. Like today, the dominant way of doing things was ingestion. You take data, duplicate it, make copies, and just move it everywhere. But I do believe that federation is going to become more and more common over platforms. We can go ahead and do federated analytics across different clouds or across where the data is. So this is where I do believe more and more of that will become more common. You do have to figure out where your dominant data is going to live and how you're going to have one copy of it. And so I think, I do think, like, as we move forward, with Omni is the first step, but there will be other things that we will do where we will enable you to run more of federated analytics across different data sources with where the data is. And in some cases, you do want to move to a central place to get the benefits of performance, benefits of capabilities that will be unique to let's say, in a specific cloud environment and all. that will justify it. But you don't have to do it for all data, right? I was talking to an architect from one of the large online companies, and they have like hundreds of petabytes in one storage layer, and they're like, we are not going to be able to move
Of
all that.
course.
It's like just
Of
not
course.
possible. So enabling the analytics on that, there it is. But then you can move data that's only relevant for advanced predictive stuff or machine learning, and you can move that and then make it work too. So it depends on what data you want to keep where and how you're analyzing.
Right, right. I think the other question which is related to that is how would one make it easy to answer questions on data usage, such as what are the top 20 data elements used in our company? Let me take a shot at this. This is something which is very near and dear to our heart. So I think there are two aspects here. One is that the data usage. Second is that what is the analytics that is being done on this one. I think the notion of access control layers and the emergence of certain unified catalogs, etc., I think they have become very vital for ensuring that people have know the transparency and who has access to what data, etc. The part which is very equally important and quite often gets left out is to know who's using what data and at what cost to the company. With the flexibility that you talked about, that people can actually run clusters, and you and I talked about aggressive upscaling, etc., quite often that can lead to runaway behavior. So we actually saw this problem with some of our marquee customers, and about 1.5 years back, started on a project for Cost Explorer, which provides the full financial governance to an organization at a level of which groups, which business unit, which particular user, what projects, at a query level. So you got a complete transparency on who's using what data and what is the associated cost with it. Let's see what other questions
And
are there.
I can add some more.
Yeah, please.
Exactly right. There's actually another question which is also linked about this, which was how about allocating more resources,
Right.
investment to use most used data and less to less used data. I would actually think about it other way around, right? I think it's not about the most used data or least used data. It's more about what computation you're doing, and then what kind of value you're getting is more relevant. I think talking to a lot of customers, what happens is, let's say for example, there is somebody in marketing team and they're running some large scale analysis for like real time offers and stuff like that. That may be way more valuable than some other bad job that is running for ETL and all of that. So I think looking at what workloads you're running and then what the value to that is, and allocating what kind of resource or what kind of capabilities you want to provide makes most sense in organizations. And I think you will align then the value to what kind of workloads are running rather than what data you're storing and how you're getting allocation of resources around it. So,
Right.
and this is the beauty of decoupling compute and storage, as Mohit, you were saying earlier, where now you can say, hey, what is the value of computation versus storage, and where do you want to align? So I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's very interesting, Sudhir. I'm looking at the set of questions here. We talked about a lot of very fundamental strategic things, but look at the questions. People are worried about very operational. So that's very good. There's another question here from Abhishek. And to the rest of the attendees, please, guys, this is a fireside chat. Trust me, Sudhir and I, we talk on a weekly basis multiple times. So this was to expose you to our thought process. So please ask questions. Let's say Abhishek's question. Can you expand more on your comments regarding how customer with on-prem can understand costs involved with using a public cloud without moving all the data and processes to the public cloud? This is a fantastic question. Let me take a shot at it, and Sudhir, please add to it. So first of all, I would say, Abhishek, and to anybody who's looking from on-prem to public cloud, you have to do two things. One is that you have to look at your use cases, business use cases, and see if I had the power of public cloud, how would it add value to me? So as an example, quite often in on-prem architectures, you have rigid fixed architectures with certain silos for certain kind of workloads. So ask this question, that if I could have all the benefits of public cloud with the flexibility, and I can actually scale my clusters up and down, and I can actually incorporate the latest technology, what would be the value? Assuming that leads to a value for you, you can go to the next level, say, okay, what would be my cost? And you can build a business justification. So that is the first part of it. The second part of this, which is equally important, is to say, how do I actually ensure an architecture that allows me to take care of moving some of these workloads from on-prem to public cloud, but also gives me a future path to it. You don't want to come up with a custom solution for this one. So I would say in that case, make sure you are investing in technology. This is one of the reasons why I think object store based technologies gives you a lot of that flexibility as opposed to putting in a proprietary stack. Invest in companies, public cloud companies that are really focused on open source. That gives you the flexibility that Sudhir and I talked about. You might be using a certain engine right now. So on one hand, you want to move to public cloud without requiring the switchover of that engine. That is very important because last thing you want to do is be rewriting your pipelines from, let's say you're using Hive to now having to rewrite in some other engine. But you also want to make sure that there is a flexibility for you to do new classes of engines that are there. So I think that's how I would look at it is identify the workloads on-prem where they will benefit from the public cloud and then invest in an architecture that gives you a flexibility to move the workload not only today, but expansions down the road.
A couple of thoughts on that, just to cover this. Like you can literally take like, the easiest way for you to do is lift and shift. You can literally say, how much is my storage? How much will it cost on-prem where you have it in HDFS versus I can go ahead and put it into cloud or wherever you're storing it. It's easy comparison. Then there is compute. The real problem with compute today on-prem in a lot of cases is it's a fixed environment. You basically had to build out this. I say a lot of times to organizations, you're paying the rate of compute on increase in your storage, because with like coupling of compute and storage, the concept looks interesting.
Right.
But over a period of time, your data is too big, your utilization on your compute nodes is much lower. So I think the real thing to figure out is what is your computation needs and how much do you need in the cloud when you decouple these things. So that's the second thing you have to look at. The third thing I will mention is you do want to look for benefits more than that, right? In a way, I agree with Mohit on lift and shift and keeping the same engines going. But in some cases, you may have scenarios where it makes sense to go ahead and modernize a couple of things where you
Absolutely.
are seeing like lot of latency in queries and your businesses are not happy with the kind of capability you're providing. Especially, for example, if you have large scale data sets, you want to do analytics on it. And if you wanted to move to more of a native service for that, I think that makes sense. So I think it all depends on how you think, but think about it from the workloads, the data, and then what kind of SLAs you want to give to your customers internally within your organizations. And then you can come up with the pricing models and all. There are a lot of calculators across all clouds, including GCP, as well as Mohit and Tim have built out like various tools for this so that you can identify what the cost structures look like. But yeah, break it down into all these components rather than saying, hey, I had 50 VMs or 500 VMs or 5,000 VMs and let me move that and see how much it costs in GCP. That is never going to be a winning proposition. That's not how you want to migrate anyway. So that's something important to look at.
But the best advice I can give you in this one is that Sudhir and I emphasizing that it's get your architectural decisions right. You don't want to go and make a decision which seemed easy today, and now you're screwed for longer term. One question to people who are submitting questions. Some of the questions came to me as a private question. Some came to panelists. May I suggest submit your questions so all the other folks can also say? I'm going to read one of the questions that came as private to me, and then I will also make sure to answer some of those questions. The question is this, that you talked about data warehouse and data lakes. Can you expand more on what their appropriate use cases and how can they work together? Sudhir, you and I are very much in alignment here, so why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is think about when you're, I actually think about them in a more holistic way, right? I think about what kind of data are you talking about? Are you talking about structured, unstructured, semi-structured? What level of queries and analytical capabilities do you need on it? And then you can talk about what kind of engines do you want to use on it? And then that is there. So I think between these engines, let's be very clear on what you're going to trade off. If you have a storage layer that is, let's say, optimized for structured store, you're going to go ahead and get much lower latency. And if you are going to go with like a store that is optimized for large scale objects and a massive scale, that's the other thing that you look at. So there are three things I look at: the latency that you expect, how fast do you want things. The second thing is what level of cost structures are you okay with, right? And the third thing is what level granular security and governance controls do you need? Like object store, which is bucket level, versus like a structured store like BigQuery or something else, is going to give you much finer grained access control. It's going to give you much lower latency on queries and stuff like that. So you just have to think through in aspect of those and then check what is my storage layer. And then the computation engine is, like, as I said, interoperable. So you can decide, hey, you have internally got a lot of skill set in Spark, keep using Spark. If you want to use a SQL engine, like you are using Presto, you are using Hive, you want to continue doing that, you can do that. Or you can have a SQL interface in other native services. So I think you can pick and choose how that goes. But fundamentally, I won't think about it like a lake and a warehouse. I would think about the characteristics of the data, the kind of query capabilities and the processing capabilities you need, and the cost structures you want, and the governance you want. Those are the aspects of it to think. And then like you can use different engines for different things. That's
Right.
That's I think there. Mohit, anything from your side to add?
Yeah, I absolutely look at these as very synergistic. And in fact, smart workflows that our customers are doing quite often will have a workflow in which data lake and data warehouse constructs are coexisting. So here is a very high level workflow reference architecture that one can think of, that you're taking your large amounts of data that are sitting in a some kind of object store. You know which of these things have the most value in a data warehouse paradigm. So you do very complex transformations using continuous data engineering for both batch and streaming. Those are available in kind of data warehouse. And then you are doing your AI ML utilizing both the data that is in object store as well as what is sitting in the data warehouse. Because what you want to do is that you want to be able to utilize all the right data that you need. You want to do this in a manner where access controls are consistent. So for example, a certain data that has gone from an object store to data warehouse, you want to make sure that access controls are kind of available there also. So I would say these are very powerful reference architecture. Qubole has made a lot of investment in partnership with GCP. So I encourage you to go take a look at what we have done with our integrations with BigQuery. As an example, data scientists need to use notebooks. Well, those notebooks should be able to work not only just on object store, but also BigQuery, right?
So one thing I will share is like some of our largest customers on BigQuery, as you mentioned, we have like the largest customer has more than 350 petabytes in it. We have multiple customers with more than 100 petabytes, and tens of petabytes is pretty common. So what I'm trying to say is like, if your use cases are purely structured, you can use these platforms to go ahead and at scale store the data in it. But it all depends on use cases, latencies, and what kind of things you want to do. So I think, think about your use cases, think about what you really want to achieve at the end of the day, and then you can make the right choices.
Good. Let's see, there's some more questions that let me take a look at it. I'll synthesize some of the questions. There's a question that came from, I think this is from Abhishek, which talks about, can you speak to the microservices deployment in Kubernetes? Customers don't want to deploy big services such as integration, data management, AI/ML in Kubernetes. That's actually not necessarily true. So first of all, Kubernetes will get utilized for microservices, and clearly there's a whole bunch of capabilities that are there. The particular topic that Sudhir and I are discussing is around large-scale data services, and we think Kubernetes absolutely has a role to play. So let me give you a couple of examples, and Sudhir, please add to it. Qubole's control plane, for example, which is in GCP, is built completely utilizing Kubernetes. What we are now also doing is that our data plane is utilizing Kubernetes stack. And sometimes you can do something like a Spark on Kubernetes, but it's very important to once again remember, the Spark on Kubernetes, sure, you can do that, but you have to see all the innovation that comes on top of it. How do you ensure that the cost optimizations are done correctly? How do you ensure that the integration of that Spark engine with ACID capabilities are done correctly? So I would say big data Kubernetes will certainly has a role to play. particularly with the need of multi-cloud. All the stacks are going to be based on Kubernetes, so you can deploy those stack across any of the clouds, including on-prem. So, Sudhir, your thoughts on it?
Oh, no, I think you nailed it. I think a couple of things there is like microservices versus like, you want to have a large scale Spark cluster, and you want to have like, nobody wants a monolithic one single deployment model anymore. I think those are more architectural patterns about what you want to do within your workloads, how you run them, and what kind of management control plane and all the platform that you're running them is actually more decoupled, right? I think, yes, as Mohit said, you will have a lot of microservices. They're built for like, Kubernetes kind of environment. It's much easier to manage and move faster on. But you will also have large scale Spark clusters. And instead of running them on Yarn, having them on like, monolithic environments there, you can move it to Kubernetes and run large scale cluster on it. And you get benefits of Kubernetes from a management side and all. So I think that's actually will happen. So I won't limit it to just microservices. There are big data workloads that can absolutely benefit from the innovation that Kubernetes is bringing to table for everybody.
Right. There are a couple of questions. There's one from Gokul, and there's a similar question which came around the hybrid, etc. I think we talked about it, but let's just spend a quick 1 minute on this. The question is, the latest data shows rise in multi-cloud and hybrid. What's your point of view, and why this trend, and pros and cons? Look, I think Sudhir and I, we are pretty explicit on this one. We do think that multi-cloud and hybrid cloud are reality. I would say, even if you don't need it today, you should be willing to consider that as a possibility down the road. However, it's very important in this particular case that let's be realistic. You do not need today a multi-cloud which is busting your workloads from one cloud to the next. If you have not even taken care of your basic data analytics architecture, and if you have not made use of the techniques that Sudhir and we talked about, of utilizing data warehouse and data lakes and doing cost optimization and preemptible VMs, don't try to over design on that one. But make sure that the technologies that you're investing in, the vendors you're investing in, can address your multi-cloud and hybrid cloud needs. We think it's definitely very important. I would say that do ask this question. How do you actually support multi-clouds? How do you support hybrid clouds? As opposed to trying to solve this problem today itself, at least make sure that directionally your architectural choices are not locked in. Thoughts, Sudhir?
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to highlight was the question you're asking is there is this advent or sudden growth in multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and why. I do believe the reason is different clouds will provide you different capabilities, and they will be good at different things, right? You can't be good at everything, and somebody is going to invest in different things. So from a Google Cloud perspective, if you really look at it, we have some of the more differentiated capabilities on analytics and AI ML. So we have a lot of customers that they may be running their operational systems in Azure or AWS, and they use us for analytics at scale. So there are so many examples of this. So when that split environment happens, I think one thing that's becoming clearer is organizations are ready to go with best of breed platforms for different workloads. I agree with Mohit. There are not many people exploring or saying, hey, let me run the same workload across multiple clouds and auto increase. That will be required in some cases, unique cases where regulators really want to see it. But in most cases, it is best of breed platform for what they want to do. And they realize there are some clouds, they're giving them better service, or they've already got investment in those clouds. And then they see, hey, these are all these innovations that are coming. Let's say, for example, in my case, in GCP, and I do want to leverage those. And so that's why multi-cloud is becoming more real, and hybrid is same way. Organizations have a huge footprint on-prem, and then as they go ahead and move to cloud, they look at it and say, hey, I can do things I couldn't do before. So I do want to go there and do it. And then over a period of time, figure out a strategy of how do I move that to the cloud. But also look at the numbers from analysts and all. You will notice the growth rates on the cloud are overwhelmingly much bigger than what on-prem growth rates are for different workloads. So I think that transition will happen, but it will take long time as there is just massive infrastructure on-prem too.
Right. I think this is where the architectural choices matter so much. At Qubole, I look back and we made certain very smart decisions. I know, Sudhir, you did the same, similar things. Separation of compute and storage, separation of control plane and data plane, be able to Kubernetize these stacks. So all of those architectural choices, I think the people like GCP and Kubol has made will allow us to fulfill the needs for multi and hybrid cloud.
So there is
I'm,
one, let me read one question which is interesting and
yeah,
dear to my heart, so I did want to pick it up.
yeah,
What would you say has accelerated culture change
yes,
the most in the terms of data democratization and adoption? I think the fundamental thing here is if you look industry by industry and you look at who is doing well and who is not doing well, more data driven companies are driving more and more change, and industries are getting completely revamped and reimagined by organizations. Look at financial services, the traditional banking sector versus the online banking, and what organizations are able to do there. Look at automotive, you will see which car companies are doing better, what kind of models are coming together from sharing and self-driving. Look at gaming, is all online. Like, I think there's a realization in the C-suite across organizations that they have to be more data driven. They have to drive digital transformations by data driven innovation, and so that is becoming a real.
right,
And one of the things that has been that's happening because of that is organizations are shifting. And this bet I had, like when I joined 2.5 3 years back, I had this bet that that's going to happen over time. So we have been investing a lot in how do I democratize insights, make them available to not just like few people with dashboards and reports, but more and more people. So
right,
the connected sheets bet that we took was like, hey, if I have large scale data sets, why can't I use a sheets experience, like do a pivot table on I have a 30 billion plus row table with all the GCP usage. I every day open it up. I was there just before this meeting. I do pivot tables, I filter it down. I know what is happening across all my products, all of that, right? And I can do that in a spreadsheet. I don't have to ask somebody to run a pipeline or anything
right.
for that. So I think that is there. And then data Q&A, which is like natural language. So I think this realization of the major change coming through industries and empowering every individual within an organization is real. And as that is happening, organizations are looking for tools and capabilities to democratize it and scale it and make sure that everybody has the right level of insights. So
Absolutely.
Mohit, back to you on this topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is so fundamental. Just like what you explained, we have designed a system in which the data sits. It's anybody, whether it's the data engineer doing batch or streaming, or SQL analytics, or data scientists, they have access to the shared data, which is there with, of course, appropriate access controls. They can collaborate with each other. One of the things when we did with Jupyter Notebooks, we made sure collaborations. In fact, I was looking other day that I use on a daily basis, I use a whole bunch of notebooks. Not a single one of them got authored by me, because there are people in my team who actually did the time and they are able to collaborate with it. So I think this notion of data democratization, where you want to make sure that right kind of data with the right set of interfaces and engines is available to people, actually unleashes the use cases that people didn't think about. The notion of this is the question and I'm going to get to the answer got completely appended, where people are asking questions that nobody thought needed to be answered. So I think that's the biggest driver of data democratization. There's one more question, which I think came in a panelist, which I think I definitely want to touch on. Are there Kubol GCP partnership programs that would benefit customers better than other cloud stacks such as Kubol S3 and Kubol Azure? This is from Patrick. Absolutely, yes. And in fact, I would say the partnership that we have done with GCP and Sudhir's team and my team work very closely. I think we have brought in a lot of innovation. Earlier, we talked about how Kubol works on both Google Cloud Storage and BigQuery. Our notebooks are utilizable with BigQuery. Of course, we have done integrations with the core compute stack. But some of the other things that's coming, and I'm very excited about integration we have done with Marketplace. So for example, if you want to utilize Kubol, you can actually just get it from Google Marketplace, including, this is important from a buying point of view, you can utilize your existing Google credits. Sudhir and my team both are working on launching it's coming in later part of this quarter, a console level integration where Qubole will be available in Google Console. It will become truly a first party kind of experience with IAM's role kind of superseding. So we'll be able to inherit Google's IAM roles, and the L1 support will get provided by Google. So I think those are the kinds of things where both in a technology level as well as marketplace level, we have done integration so as to add a lot of value.
Yeah, I think the key thing is there's product innovation we are doing. See, fundamentally, there will be capabilities that are common across all clouds. We like expect the common things working everywhere the same. And then there is innovation that we can do with tighter integration, like BigQuery integration, super excited about that. But also there are various different things we can do from a product stuff that will enhance the end-to-end user experience. So I think we have been working on those, a lot of those. But I think the most interesting stuff from customer perspective that I keep hearing is this marketplace integration is super critical, right? So there are a lot of organizations that have done a lot of big commits with Google Cloud. Now all of them get to reuse some of those commits with Qubole and stuff like that. So I think we have both sides, like deeper integration, deeper alignment on the product side, but also on the business side, trying to make it easy for organizations to leverage the capabilities with Qubole. And that's our thing. We want to have organizations to have choice, so they can easily get access to it and go deploy it and use it and also.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're interested, please ping either Sudhir or myself. Go to Qubole webpage. You can do free trials that are there on GCP. Let's say one more question. Oh, that's an interesting one. It's coming back to our batch streaming. Anna is asking, can you expand on the concept of batch versus streaming for both ingestion and output to develop and maintain data pipelines? And what is your experience and key elements to consider when moving to a faster real-time model? So it's a long question. Can you read that one? Do you want to take a shot at it? And
I don't know if I got the question completely, but let me take some customer examples and then maybe that answers it. And if we didn't, we will try to get back if you can have a follow-up. But think like, if you look at one of our largest music service providers, they collect all of these events in real time of what somebody is listening to, process it in real time, and then can do real-time personalized experience after before the song is done and stuff like that. That is a completely real-time streaming pipeline that's running. But for that to run, you do have to join with like historical data in the same pipeline, so that you can make sure you not just know what the lost song was, but you also have some kind of characteristics that you understand about the user from a historical perspective. So that's a pipeline that completely runs in real time. It has a lot of value in it, right? The second thing we have also seen is a lot of organizations trying to make a real-time CDC kind of pipelines. When the data is coming in, you want to have a pipeline where you can stream data, all the CDC change capture happens. You have a pipeline that takes it, maybe transform it a little bit, or maybe just have a pure pipeline that pushes that into GCS or data warehouse, BigQuery, or any of them. So I think as they do that, that's another kind of pipeline, which is really real time. And there are a lot of batch pipelines where organizations put data into cloud and then process it over time, because that's a cost optimization mechanism in many cases, where I can wait. I don't have to continuously run these things and worry about it. So those are different kinds of pipelines. My thing is always think about the benefit you're going to get. Is real-time processing going to get you the benefit? I will give you a real example. In my last job, I used to run all the data platform for Zulily. We basically started processing some pipeline that we had. We used to do it like once a day. We suddenly went to cloud and we started running it like every hour, and the cost went through the roof. And then my thing was like, at the end of the month, I was looking at my bill. I'm like, what happened? And my team was like, we couldn't run this regularly. Now I can run it every hour. I'm like, okay, can I go and talk to my customer on the marketing side, who is to the consumer of that? And they're like, yeah, we only come in at 9 a.m. and do a processing, and then we don't look at it the whole day. But I had now multiplied my cost by 24. And I'm like, there's no value. So I think the real question is, why do you have a streaming pipeline? What batch pipeline do you have? What value do you get? And look back and then make that right decision for your business.
Very, very true. It's very interesting that those of us who are in technology, sometimes we have to pull back people from saying, don't have to necessarily do microsecond or millisecond pipelines. Ask the value, exactly what you said. For example, the micro batches could be very effective. And that's where you can tie this to something like cost governance, cost explorer tool we did. Anna, I would suggest one thing. I don't have time to go into the details, but similar to what Sudhir talked about, there's a use case that we actually talk in a recent launch we did of Qubole Pipeline Service. This is one of our customer, MIQ. They have developed a series of predictive targeting solution for their customers to gather large volumes of data about real time, even generate insights and take appropriate action. And they built it using Qubole Pipeline Service. And you'll find this meta point that Sudhir and I saying, of course, there's a tremendous value for streaming, but be smart about what kind of streaming solution you're doing. And the other thing I would say is that make sure don't create something so complex that people are not able to use it or it's inflexible. Make sure there's a flexibility kind of built in on this one. I think we have wrapped it up. In fact, Ashley is telling me, Sudhir, you and I need to wrap it up. Yes. As always, our sessions end up being tiny bit on the longer end of it. I wanted to thank Sudhir, you, of course, always fun to talk to you and compare notes and see the synergies and patterns. So thank you very much. To all our participants, thank you for joining. I'm sure there's tons of ideas Sudhir and I have done. Feel free to ping each of us. We love to get connected on LinkedIn. I also have a little plug, Open Data Lake Summit that Qubole is doing. This is an event where we're bringing all the best concepts in data lakes. So go to qubole.com and register for that. It is a forum that includes lots of practitioners, including our friends from GCP as well as our customers. So thanks a lot, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mohit, and thanks everybody for joining.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.